Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is beginning introduction to Buddhist meditation and philosophy. I'm Lama Dawa Zangpo, and my orientation is towards the Kagyu lineage of Tibetan Buddhism, but hopefully this is of a general nature and really should be appropriate for any viewers that are interested in Tibetan Buddhism, curious, starting on the path, studying and learning about Buddhism in general and Tibetan Buddhism as an approach in particular. And I always like to say, everyone watching, you're all invited to join us, either by asking and submitting questions. If any of you are motivated to actually join us live in future broadcasts, you're very welcome to. We'd love to have input and have you present questions and so on, so we can make this as relevant as possible to serve your needs. Tonight we have Tal with us, kind of our regular beginning meditator who comes with very good beginner's mind and lots of, I think, relevant and interesting questions that are probably on many people's mind. So we'll just jump right in. Tal, please start with any questions you have based on your practice recently.
So comment below for sure. We definitely want to hear that. My question is actually maybe not so common. I mean, I don't know. I'll just ask it. So is there a shape to a thought?
Okay, so what we've been talking about for many months now is shamatha or shine practice, which is based on just sort of calming the mind, letting the mind rest in its natural place, having all the confused and disturbing thoughts that swirl around just sort of settle down so that there can be some clarity. And your question goes to what happens when we start to get a little bit of clarity, a little bit of calmness, that the mind is not so wound up and jumping around. So this is a very important question, because this is what we do in Tibetan Buddhism, actually, is we start to look at the mind, we look at thoughts, we look at phenomena that appear to be separate and outside of ourselves. And ultimately, we also look at the self, the me, that's the meditator, and try to understand what is the nature of these things, of phenomena, of the self, of thoughts. So these are very traditional questions. I'm a little surprised to hear you ask this question, but I'm glad you are. So, does a thought have shape? The way it works is generally these are not questions that where we supply the answer to you. That would be like cheating on a test. You know, if you're taking the motor vehicle DMV test, you can't have someone next to you telling you how many feet do you need to brake, or, you know, if you can turn right from the left lane or whatever. So this is sort of like that. It is a very important question, and it's a traditional question. Does a thought have a shape? We also ask, does a thought have color? Does it have a place where it comes from? Does it exist in a certain place? Where does it go when it leaves? You know, if a thought is something substantial, or we say has some kind of substance to it, then it would stand to reason it has a shape, it has some kind of form, it has some kind of color, it has some kind of way that it comes and abides and goes. So you need to find this out for yourself. Does a thought have?
Can I say my experience, and then we can comment on that?
Certainly, yes.
I think of it almost in the terms of like a smoke, where there's this bigger chunk of smoke in the middle, but on both ends it kind of like dissipates slowly, and you're not sure which side is the front and which side is the back, and it kind of comes in and is this thing with like I guess, yeah, smoke was the way that I thought of it when I try analyzing them.
Well, let me ask you a question. What have you been smoking? I couldn't resist. Of
Yeah,
course, it's an obvious
right.
question.
Or maybe
Um,
electric is another way that I can think of it.
yeah.
But in a that would be more chaotic than the smoke kind of having to maybe either way. Yeah.
Well, no, I think it's a legit, it's a good answer, and we have to come up with things for ourselves that are metaphors or some kind of symbolic sort of representation of these things. But what a traditional teacher would say to a traditional student is maybe wouldn't say you're wrong, wouldn't necessarily say you're right, but would probably say something along the lines of, well, you should keep looking because you're looking in the right way. You're trying to come up with some kind of a metaphor, basically, but a traditional teacher, and I'll take that role right this moment, would say, you haven't gone far enough. You haven't penetrated the actual essence. You haven't really answered the question fully. Keep looking. In other words, the idea is encourage you, give you some kind of support. But your answer is not complete. It's not fully adequate. It's not the final answer. But keep looking, that's the right idea in a sense. Keep looking. Um, I can give you a little bit of a maybe sneak preview. These are not things that are easily put into words. There may not be a final answer. There may be. Again, I don't want to sort of prejudice your searching. You know, that wouldn't be fair to you. You have to see, you have to find out what is a thought. And then we look further, what is the thought's relationship to you and to your mind? And even what's a thought when we see something outside of ourselves? We see a car, we see a dog, we see a plate of food, you know, we see something on TV, whatever we see. What we're seeing, we think exists in some kind of a real solid way. A question we might ask ourselves is what I'm seeing something that really exists out there, or am I seeing a thought of that thing? If that makes sense. Am
Yes.
I projecting my own mind, my own thoughts? Am I superimposing a thought on something out there? We have to keep looking. This is not easy. That's the point, right? If it was easy, everyone would be enlightened and would have all the answers. But it is a process of more subtle understanding and certain breakthroughs along the way where you go, you know, we say the aha moment, aha, I got it, you know, just, now I see something differently than I ever saw before. I understand it more subtly or more completely.
Well, what just popped into my head while you were saying all that was like a fish in water doesn't know that there's an existence outside of that water.
Well, that's very true. That is very true. We use a metaphor in Tibetan Buddhism actually about a frog in a well, thinking that the well is the whole world. And somebody comes and tells that frog, oh, there's an ocean out there, a much bigger body of water. The frog is not even going to believe it. It's going to say, oh, you're just full of, you know, you're just making that up. That can't possibly be. This is the world. This is what I see and experience. So we're like that fish or like that frog in many respects. And what meditation does is actually gives us an opportunity to have some kind of a step back, some objectivity. We can see things from this sort of calmer, clearer vantage point, right? Where we can actually see in a more profound or a deeper way. It's really the whole point of meditation in some sense, is to have direct knowledge, direct knowing, not a concept, not something, you know, we understand conceptually or intellectually from reading or hearing about something, but our own experience. So I don't want to take your experience away from you. You know, if it looks like smoke or seems like that, or you think it is smoke or a smoky type of thing, okay, that's a start.
Well,
Keep going.
when I say this smoke, I mean that these words or ideas or thoughts are floating in on, and they're all kind of intertwined within each other, and there's
No, I get
layers
that.
to it.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I can see how that works, at least up to a point. How that metaphor does have some connection with thoughts. Thoughts are smoke-like in some sense, you could say. They're sort of amorphous. They they kind of shape shift. Like smoke doesn't hold still as one thing, and thoughts don't hold still. They're morphing into other thoughts, and so on and so forth. Thoughts are continually changing. They're slippery like fish. They're elusive.
They're
You
transparent in some ways that it's
know,
hard to pinpoint exactly where they are and
yes,
how they
that's
came
exactly
about
right.
even.
That's exactly right. So we start looking at more and more thoughts and more subtle thoughts. We can look at thoughts that are more like emotions, like, if you have a sudden feeling or a sudden thought that you're being insulted, for example, or praised, how does that thought of being praised or of being insulted have some power over us? Because usually if we're praised, we feel happy and puffed up, and if we're criticized or insulted, we feel bad. So what is going on there? What is feeling bad? What is feeling good? How does that work? How does that thought affect who we are? Are we something that changes that much that we are jerked around by changing thoughts? Or do we start to develop some kind of relationship where thoughts maybe just kind of can come and go? We see them, but they don't affect us in some way. So maybe there's that possibility, even as a goal, to become so strong-minded, so clear, so calm and relaxed, so present, that thoughts don't ruffle our feathers, that thoughts don't have that power over us to control us or victimize us in some sense. But then again, who is the self that is either being victimized or not being victimized? This is a long journey. It takes time, and we must keep practicing, all of us. I'm saying this to everyone viewing this and saying it to myself as well. This is a journey, and that's the beauty of it. It's kind of a very exciting adventure of discovery. But if we get too focused on even trying to come up with answers, we may lose sight of the calmness. So you don't ever want to lose that shamatha or shine, that calm, abiding meditation. The actual real meditation, as it's taught traditionally, is kind of an inseparable fusion. The mind stays calm and focused, very peaceful, and yet at the same time very sharp and precise in being able to look at things meaning, again, the self, external phenomena, and so on. We call that sharp mind prajna, which is like the sword of wisdom that can cut through confusion or muddy, fuzzy-headed thinking and give us a really sharp, clear understanding of things. So, Buddhism has many important tools. Excuse me. We do cultivate wisdom in the sense of study, reading sort of Buddhist scriptures and teachings by great philosophical masters of the past, who really looked deeply and wrote very clearly and eloquently about these kinds of things. But again, it's not to just rely on somebody else's teachings or explanation or their insights. We have to then internalize it, apply it for ourselves, really look deeply, see for ourselves if it makes sense, if it matches with our own experience. So that's one thing, is the sort of training of the mind, of the intellect. But the other part, and very important, I said at the very beginning of this podcast that I'm a Lama traditionally trained in the Kagyu lineage. Well, in the Kagyu lineage, but actually in all the Tibetan lineages, something else is very important, not just this training of sort of intellect, but the heart. And what's traditionally taught, especially at least in this lineage, the Kagyu lineage, is the importance of compassion and devotion, because we're going to get into some sticky new material here, or new territory, but it can't be denied or put off forever. So I might as well just plunge in here for a moment. There's some very important things that go on with Tibetan Buddhism, in particular, about the teacher, the Lama, the guru. No, that's not me. I'm just an ordinary person, an ordinary low-level Lama, but a really great Lama like the Karmapa, Dalai Lama, Lamas that are the heads of these great lineages, or great realized yogis. The idea is that if there's a strong connection, it kind of needs to be made between the student and the teacher. There is something about this is a little hard to talk about, because I'm always a little cautious, because I realize my audience here is typically Western and American students, and this might be a bit hard to sort of swallow for many of us. So if you want to take it with a grain of salt, please do. But there is something about the devotion, the meeting of the minds, if you will, the uncontrived, genuine sort of appreciation or faith in that great lamas, that great teachers' realization, where there can be, when the conditions are ripe, and is where there's like a meeting of the minds, where you can sort of link up with that teacher's realization. That's a key and sort of a unique. Now I'm giving you something, Tao, you may have never heard before. You haven't heard it from me before in all these months we've been talking together. So kind of maybe been holding back on you a little bit. But this is part of what we call Tantric or Vajrayana Buddhism. This is what sets, sort of in some ways sets Tibetan Buddhism apart. That there's a kind of a leap of faith. There's something that's going on there, and faith and devotion. Now, I want to say not blind faith, not blind devotion, but when a student, again, I'm talking in a traditional sense. We don't have maybe as many opportunities here in the West, but traditionally, when students, young monks or disciples were in the presence of these really great, really great masters, you could see that. You can see for yourself how great these beings are. They're amazing, right? Their minds are just so clear. They're so fresh and present and unstuck and humble and kind. All the great qualities that we call spiritual qualities, these beings have. They've perfected themselves, or they've gone a long ways towards that perfection. And at some point, you almost have to have some faith. It's kind of like, well, if we're practicing Buddhism, we probably have some kind of belief that at least the Buddha himself must have known what he was talking about, or we wouldn't be wasting our time trying to follow his teachings. If he was kidding people or pulling the wool over people's eyes, or just kind of pretending to be enlightened, I think people would have poked holes in his teachings over these centuries. But clearly we have some kind of fundamental belief that he knew what he was talking about, that he really did break through, that he really was enlightened, that he really was not stuck anymore and trapped in samsara, in duality. So he clearly presented a path to do what he did. Buddhism is not blind faith, like, oh, just have faith in me, the Son of God or something, and you'll be free, and you'll be, home free, and you'll be in heaven forever. Buddhism doesn't say anything like that. So it's not about just have faith in the guru or the Lama, but it's understanding the qualities they've achieved, and then starting through one's own practice, starting to get to the place where one realizes, yes, actually, I have that same potential. It's really about matching our potential and bringing our potential up kind of into awareness. But we need an example. We need a benchmark to show us kind of what's achievable. Because when you see so I can only speak for myself, like the Karmapa. And I'm at the previous 16th Karmapa and the 17th Karmapa, the 16th reincarnation. It's just unbelievable to me. Magnificent, breathtaking, awe-inspiring, almost inconceivable that a human being can be that magnificent, that great, that sort of, I hate to use the word perfect, but basically pretty much perfect in the sense of kind of flawless. Is rare. It's very, very rare. Let's just say that, of course. However, it's not impossible, and it shows if a human being can achieve a state like that, our nature is the same. And that's where meditation comes in. We start to see our nature. We start to realize we can break through and realize my nature is the same. So it starts with looking at thoughts, to kind of circle back, looking at the mind, looking at phenomena, but it starts with that calm, clear mind that we have to continually train in, because that gets better and better and more calm and more peaceful. They say, here's a traditional teaching. In the beginning, your mind is like a waterfall. The water's just cascading. The thoughts are just cascading. Thoughts are just tumbling down. Then it says, after much practice, the mind becomes more like a gently flowing river. So instead of being so turbulent and just cascading thoughts, the thoughts are moving slower, much more manageable, much more gently. Then it says at the end, it's like the river merging into the great vast ocean, calm ocean. The vastness, the depth, the almost infinity of the ocean, it's almost ungraspable. So we can think about that. When we're a beginner, our mind is like a turbulent water. When we've gotten some real meditation experience under our belt, the mind is much calmer, not completely still, but moving much calmer and slower. And then when we really achieve shamatha or shine, the mind can be very still, very open and still, like a vast ocean. When it's turbulent, we don't really have an opportunity even to look at our thoughts. What shape do they have? What color do they have? Or whatever. When the mind's moving like a river and slowing down, we can start to get a glimpse. We can start to apply this vipassana, this looking practice. And so that's kind of the journey. But I mentioned the fact of devotion and faith. Again, these are loaded words. Westerners do not like the concept of devotion because we all have heard so many stories. We know that, any authority figure is going to tend to, most often, many times, too often, let's say, will abuse their position of authority, use it to manipulate or do worse things.
Especially in America, where you have a much
it happens
more,
everywhere. It's not just
America. Americans have this individual spirit type of mentality.
Yes, that's exactly right. We're very anti-authoritarian and we're very independent. We don't want to be told what to do or anything like that. And Buddhism's not really telling us what to do. It's trying to show us what's possible and what to do and describe or show us, well, here's the map. You have to follow the map yourself. But at least here's the map. At least you can see there is a map. We're not just lost in the wilderness completely with no idea of which way to get out. There's a map. This map's been followed by countless people over many centuries now. It's worked. It's a reliable map. It's a map that really does point to the treasure, kind of. So we'd be foolish probably to say, well, I'm going to be very independent. I'm not going to follow that map. Well, that's our choice, but you're going to waste a lot of time. A map is there to really expedite our search, you know. So I want to come back to what I was talking about with faith. Maybe we shouldn't use the word devotion, but faith, confidence. That's another translation. Confident. Have confidence. Confidence that the Buddha was really who he says he was, and who history tells us he was, what enlightenment really is, or the Karmapa, or the Dalai Lamas, or great beings. Have some faith. A little faith is not a bad thing. Blind faith, not so good. But a little faith goes a long way. But faith isn't the only part. When I'm talking about, so let me go back for a second. I was talking about, initially we talked about the mind and the intellect. That's the mind. Now we're talking about faith. That's the heart. But there's one other aspect of the heart that's not about faith. It might be easier for some of us in the West. The word is compassion. You can say empathetic love. That's the other part. So the mind alone may not get us enlightened or get us fully, very deeply realized. It'll get us started. But the heart has to be engaged. So I have to say that. As a Buddhist practitioner and a Buddhist teacher, I have to say this. The heart is really important. And the heart is faith, but the heart is also compassion. We actually can look at it like a coin that has a head and tails, two sides to it. One side is faith, one side is compassion. The way to understand it, and this is very nice, is faith is for beings that are accomplished, that are realized, that are, really have gone far on the path. Faith above, we say, faith going towards them. Compassion is towards beings that are confused and still caught in suffering. So we have compassion for them. It's not their fault. Well, you could say it is their fault. It's their habits, but that's out of ignorance. It's not really maliciousness, but basically everyone that's not enlightened, everyone that's basically not a Buddha is confused. So there's nothing, there's no shortage. And we encounter people all the time in our day-to-day lives. So the way to apply Buddhism in our day-to-day, moment-to-moment life is to remember other people matter, and animals matter. Other beings matter. They have their own story, their own drama, their own confusion, their own problems. They're aging, they're getting sick, they are dying, they're losing loved ones, everyone, all of us. So we shouldn't just feel for ourselves or think, the notion, the default position for people is we always think, oh, me. It's all about me. It's all about my problem. It's all about my enlightenment. It's all about my journey. The whole thing we hear about, like Native Americans or whatever, put yourself in somebody else's shoes or moccasins or whatever. Put yourself in somebody else's place. Be in their place, looking back at you. What's the difference? This is how we start to also cultivate equanimity and equality of mind. So this is very important because that's fundamental truism, that everything is equal. We only are attached to ourselves because, we're coming from this place. But everyone else deserves the same thing, the same respect that we would want, the same dignity. Everyone wants to be heard or seen, in the sense of know that people care about them, that they matter. If we just go around tunnel vision and it's just about me and my life and my suffering, that's very self-centered. And that's the cause of our suffering. That increases our suffering. So faith and compassion need to be cultivated by us as Tibetan practitioners, as Buddhist practitioners, as just people trying to grow up and be good, spiritually mature, people, trying to make progress in our life. Because the idea is that our life gets better and better and better as time goes on, not worse and worse, not better, worse, better, worse, better, worse. But we try to have a trajectory where we're improving, where every year we should be a better person than the previous year. We should be older and wiser. We should be older and more compassionate, older and kinder, older and gentler, older and more humble. I mean, if that's the journey of our life, then we're moving in the right direction. And when we die, at least we'll know, or when we're getting ready to die, we'll know that at least we're moving in the right direction. So we keep meditating on this journey, on this path, in this tradition. We meditate to clear the mind, to focus the mind, to sharpen the mind. But at the same time, we cultivate the heart in our day-to-day life. And in Tibetan Buddhism in particular, and in all Buddhist schools, actually, we say prayers. And again, like I said, Westerners, these are words that for many of us, because of the traditions we grew up in, we may be a little suspicious or skeptical or doubtful. We may not like those words or ideas. Prayer, why should I pray? Who do I pray to? We can have lots of skepticism, lots of questions. But prayer is more a sense of, in the Buddhist sense, it's not that you're praying necessarily to somebody. You're not saying, Buddha, help me or save me. It's not like that. A prayer is what we call it. The Tibetan word means aspiration, to aspire. So it's sort of an aspiring to be greater than we are, to be bigger than we are, to be better than we are, to be more wise than we are, to be more loving than we are. It's about intention, aspiring and intention, aspiration and intention. That's the purpose of prayer. So we say words in these prayers and these liturgies or prayers. And the idea is that we try to actually sort of contemplate and get the meaning while we're saying those words. So we say in Buddhism also that we're trying to work with body, speech, and mind. And this is a traditional thing that's taught. And that we say there's 3 gates of virtue, to use kind of translated terminology. 3 gates of virtue. We can have virtue with our mind by thinking good thoughts. We can have virtue with our body by helping a little old lady across the road, or, if you're not a Boy Scout, feeding a stray dog or whatever, things with the body. And then with speech, by saying kind words, healing words, not being divisive, not being malicious, not being angry with angry words, or spiteful, or spreading gossip. These are actually important things. This is sort of like the 10 commandments of Buddhism, actually. And it's divided up like that, kind of. There's actually 3 things in the mind. We're not supposed to be covet other things and have anger in our mind and have wrong views. And then with the body, we don't lie, we don't steal, we don't do sexual misconduct, lie, steal, and we don't kill or hurt others. And then with speech, there's 4 things. So it makes 10 total. 3 of mind, 3 of body, that's 6, and 4 of speech. So we actually say speech has more possibilities of good and bad, or at least of bad, because we talk about slander, harsh words, dividing people, and lying. Those are the 4. So we try not to do those things. We try. We all make mistakes. We're not perfect. That's okay too. But
that's for sure.
We learn to forgive ourselves and keep getting better and better and better. And we notice ourselves. This is the path of self-learning. It's not just about learning the shape of a thought. It's about learning how we work, our strengths and weaknesses. If we have a tendency towards gossip, the idea of mindfulness is we start to at least recognize and acknowledge and see that I'm saying things about somebody else. I'm talking behind their back, or I'm saying bad things about so-and-so. If we can catch ourselves, that's mindfulness. Then we tell ourselves, I really shouldn't do that. There's no benefit in that. It's causing harm to others. It's actually causing harm to myself. It's not how I really want to behave as somebody that's trying to wake up, trying to improve myself. So we make sort of like our ongoing New Year's resolutions. I won't gossip anymore, or I'll gossip less, or if I catch myself gossiping, I will cut myself off. I'll stop. And little by little, we realize, oh, I can change. I can change in positive ways. I don't have to say that angry thing that was in my mind and just let it all blurt out. I can have some self-control or stop, the other things we talked about, body and
Not a
mind.
lot of self-control going on out there in the
I'm
universe.
sorry, say again?
There's not a lot of self-control going on out there.
Well, that I don't know because I can't speak for anyone else, and I don't really know what other people are
Right.
doing so much. But and that's something I kind of come back to as a theme as a teacher. It's not. I've even said this to you, I think, a few times in the past. It's what I say is the way I say it is. It's nobody's business what somebody else is doing. We're not our brother's keeper. We're not here to try to be keeping tabs on others, and then because that creates a subtle form of judgment. And we don't need to do that. That's something I think we can drop. If we can drop it, it's a kind of a big relief. It's a natural tendency. We are social monkeys. We observe our fellow monkeys, our fellow humans, and we tend to point fingers or judge, or we try to understand what other people's behavior is, and so on. But I guess my perspective is I have enough to keep track of with my own mind and my own behavior that it's a distraction. If I'm looking at other people and judging them, then I'm sort of not fully being accountable to myself. So that's just a little thing I guess I felt I need to say. But yeah, that's the thing. This is a path of really, that's the clarity, right? That's the calming the mind, that's slowing down the turbulent thoughts to the river, moving towards trying to be the ocean, and just stay present and mindful. Keep your eye on the ball. The ball is not what somebody else is doing. The ball is the ball of your own mind and your own thoughts. Keep looking at that. That's a full-time job. That's really a full-time job. So, okay. Well, I really digressed a little bit and kind of got into a lot of stuff based on your initial question about what is a thought or what shape does the thought have.
I think it was excellent.
It was a great question. And again, it's really the heart of things. We are questioning reality in a sense. Most people never stop and ask themselves, what is a thought? What does a thought have a shape or something?
Or
So
a beginning,
kind of,
or did you come up with it, or how did it form? Like what is it? It's amazing how that's not part of our curriculum in the West. I don't understand how it cannot be. Like we learn about neurons and we learn about some of these things, but how do they interact? Is that where a thought comes from? Nobody stops to. It's a really important question. Where does a thought? How does it arise, and then how is it observed? By what is it observed in order to give it life and consciousness or whatever is happening? Like, what does it matter that electricity is going on? It doesn't tell me anything about the nature of an experience.
Yes, consciousness. It's amazing, and of course that's really the whole point of what Buddhism has been all about for 2,500 years. The West has not really, although Socrates said, know thyself, examine thyself, oneself. So it was there at one point in sort of Greek, Western philosophy. But yes, it's kind of been, well, we got into science, which is about the external world and, discovering how the external world works. And we've really not looked. I mean, you could say Freud and psychology to some extent has made an attempt, but it's not nearly as profound as the Buddhist, as the meditative approach, it would seem. But here we are, and we're very fortunate if we have encountered Buddhism and have some implicit faith, confidence, respect for this path.
I think of it in terms of like there are a lot of thinkers, the philosophers, even like someone who like an Einstein who did think about the morality and ethics, and he put his just saying there are many people who are thinkers out there.
Yes.
throughout time that have contributed to these deep analysis of thyself or whatever.
Yeah. Well, in this particular path, there's been many, countless numbers of really great people, men and women, who have devoted their lives to not just understanding, but having realization, having, actual confident experience of who or what am I? How does the mind work? What is consciousness in a sense? That's what this is. That's why it's such an amazing path.
I'm just
It took it.
dumbfounded by the fact that it's not part of any curriculum in the West, not even colleges, right? Like where you think like you get a
Right.
little bit of a higher learning about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
How is it so bypassed? It doesn't even make sense. It's so fundamental.
Yeah. Well, it's easier to study geology or astronomy or biology or English literature. Consciousness is maybe because very few professors and people in the West really have a really profound, deep understanding of what consciousness is. So it's easier to.
Right, but it could be a joint exploration of this, at least at the very minimum. It should be introduced in some level. I'm not saying I'm changing the world. It baffles my mind, not that it's not there.
Well, it's here now because Buddhism came to the West, and partly thank you to the Chinese for invading Tibet, and Tibetan
Silver
teachers are
lining.
now all across the world, and many people are being attracted to this. I think because, as you're pointing out, many people have realized there has been a void. There has been this missing piece. And humans need this, and the planet needs it, and humanity seems to really need it at this time in particular. Science is taking us very far, but it's also giving us bombs and weapons and lasers and, of course, spaceships. I mean, the mind is doing amazing things, but the spaceships and atomic bombs and artificial intelligence reduce human suffering. And the answer seems to be no, they don't address human suffering at all. In the terms of our pride, our jealousy, our anger, these kinds of things hurt us. These are the thorns in our sort of consciousness, that prick us and hurt us. And
They
our
don't
attachments,
change.
of course, knowing how to make a rocket that can take people to Mars is amazing and mind-boggling, but it doesn't help us deal with the loss of a loved one. That deep existential pain, or when we find out that we have some dreaded diagnosis of, something, and that we're facing the end of our life, or that we're going through tremendous pain and suffering. The rockets don't help us with that. But it doesn't mean we should stop building rockets. It just means we need a diverse approach to being a complete human being or a complete human species. We can have science and great technological advancements. I mean, clearly that's the way we're heading. There's no stopping that. But if we can somehow maybe bring up to par our hearts and our consciousness, that would be a great thing for humanity.
Yeah.
But there's been great beings in the West. Albert Schweitzer, is a great. People don't even know who Albert Schweitzer was, but back in the, I guess, 40s and 50s, he was a great humanitarian. Those of you that don't know, he was a physician. He went to Africa and he helped countless people there, but he was also a huge vegetarian. And part of his vision was this understanding about, again, the suffering of all beings, and that humanity, doesn't need to prey on and abuse and contribute to the slaughter and killing of defenseless animals just to feed themselves. So Leonardo da Vinci was a vegetarian. There's, Pythagoras was a vegetarian.
Well, are you saying, when you say vegetarian, are you saying pescatarian or something like that, where they're eating fish as well, or
Well,
egg?
I'm not making that distinction. I know I'm saying vegetarian, not eating animals of any kind, fish or animals. If
Okay.
you catch a fish and it's got a hook in its mouth, it's
Well,
writhing
the
around because
reason
it's
why
been
I
paid.
ask is because that would be construed as vegan at this time, and I don't know if there's I don't know, because there's certain things like eggs, and then there's cheeses.
Sure.
So I don't know where to draw the line with vegetarian.
Well, that's a good question. That's not, I think, what we need to get into tonight.
No, no, but it came to mind when you said it. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
That's fine. That's fine. I think
Off
that's
topic.
something I think there's stages probably, moving from eating less and less animal products, and so on. But again, we don't have to talk about that now.
No, not at all.
That's not the,
Well, anyway, this is a good point to end. Thank you so much, Lama
okay.
Dawa. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Tal. It's been good. I hope this is a benefit to the viewers. Again, just maybe full circle. Again, if you're watching this, if you enjoy or get something out of this, if you'd like to participate in the future, please, you're really welcome to. You can contact us. Maybe Tal
Comment
can,
below.
in the comments, you could ask. We can email you or get back to you if you like. And Tal, is there a way for people that can actually contact you, and if they
Uh,
would like to
you
join a
you can
Zoom
email
class?
us at the Buddhist Meditator at gmail.com.
Okay, learn
All right.
something new. Great.
All
Okay.
right. Have a good
Thank you,
night.
one and all. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.